and also a webcomic is a thing that I've been working on. My original goal was to have that posted this year, and that didn't happen. It is gonna happen in 2020. I will say that now. I said in that video that for a fact I will have the comic out by the end of 2020. And guess what didn't happen? It'll for sure be out in 2021 unless I like die or something.
Last year, I said that my webcomic would 100% be out in 2021 unless I, died or something. And I did die or something.
Well, it's been a long time coming. After starting the process in 2018, giving failed updates after failed updates, and 1 second puberty later, I can finally say, without a shadow of a doubt, my first ever comic, The Search for SACREUM, is set to release November 1st, 2023. Which in itself is funny because I've been saying late September, early October, so it's still technically late. But there's some things I think you should know before it's out. Hello and welcome back to my channel. I hope you're doing well. My god, the fact that this comic is coming out is honestly a miracle. And the fact that it's happening is pretty surreal. I know you guys are all excited to watch this video because you've all been waiting about as long as I have, so I'm just gonna get into things. For once. What do you need to know before reading? Older subscribers of mine have a general idea of what it's about via my old All About OC series, but when I started outlining this video, it dawned on me that those videos are pretty old. So a lot of my newer viewers don't even know the bare minimum. That said, since the entire concept of the story was still new at the time, I purposely left out a lot of key details because I was afraid things would change. Basically none of those details have changed, but that just means old and new viewers alike are in for a treat in this video. What is The Search for SACREUM about, and who are those funny little characters in this drawing here? So let's start from the beginning. Ever since the beginning of time, humans and beasts coexisted throughout the world. A human is what it sounds like. It's a human being. A beast can be a number of things, from vampires to mermaids to Jersey devils to chupacabras, all of which are in the comic, by the way. A beast is any non-human humanoid. Beasts have powers that they can use depending on their race, and humans are larger in population. And regardless of their differences, things were peaceful in the land of SACREUM, and all went well in ye old ancient times. And then, get this, something happened. In the modern day, humans and beasts are at odds with each other, despite still living together throughout society. Sorry, my microphone cut out. The king of beasts eventually decides that he wants to completely purge humans from existence, which is not a cool dude thing to do, and he starts plotting to do just that. His son has different plans though, and runs away from the castle in an attempt to unite beasts and humans once again. And while that's all fine and dandy, there's one big question I'm sure a lot of you have. What happened? But here's the thing. No one knows, because SACREUM is just a story usually told to children. What happens in the story depends on who's telling it, because even in a fictional world, people still change the details a bit to something that makes them feel good. Some versions blame beasts for the falling out, some blame humans, some blame a little bit of both, but the real details of the story are something that you're all gonna have to wait for. So these characters, right? If you couldn't figure it out by now, these are the main players throughout the comic, so if you don't know them, let's get you acquainted. Front and center is Delaney. He's the vampire prince in question, and the one who left home to fight back against his father. Is uniting the world impossible for someone to do on their own? Most definitely. Does Delaney think he can do it? Yeah, I mean, how hard can it be, right? He has the best of intentions, and he really wants to help the world, but his ego has him convinced that everyone else will be on the same page if he just asks them to play nice. He's not a complete idiot, though, and knows somewhat he can't do this entirely on his own, which is where the others come in. This guy is Low, a werewolf friend of Delaney's. He doesn't really like him. And they don't get along, but they do travel together. Low is completely uninterested in everything Delaney is trying to do, but he's tagging along anyway. He doesn't talk about his reasons why, but he's definitely there, and that can't be denied. He's more on the aggressive side and has a pretty short temper, especially for people like Delaney. And he has no desire to help him, but while he might mock Delaney for his failures, he doesn't seem to get in his way at all. And as the others come into the picture, he remains just as uninterested as before. The purple-haired woman is Alice, and she's a human human eager to help Delaney. And while sometimes she's taken aback by Delaney's out there personality, she is much more patient with him than Lo, and she sees the good in him. She's much more realistic than Delaney when it comes to what to expect on their adventures, but she's just as motivated as him to make a change in the world. That said, her main goal in everything seems to be something else entirely, which may or may not relate to the young girl just below her. Spoiler, it does relate to the young girl just below her. This is Noe. She's a jackalope who is glued to Alice's side, and Alice's main goal is to provide for Noe and make sure she's safe, and Noe trusts Alice more than anyone. She's shy and introverted, and when you combine that with the fact that she's mute due to her past, it makes it hard for her to connect with new people. Alice does her best in trying to surround her with loving people, but it's hard for her to open up to anyone she doesn't know. In terms of motives, Noe is on the same page as Alice and Delaney, but seeing as she's a 10-year-old child, it's hard for her to find ways that she can contribute. And to be fair, nobody is asking or expecting her due to her age. She's kind of just there because Alice is there. So no one really expects her to do anything grand in terms of helping them. But she wants to help out the best she can regardless. And last but most certainly not least, we have Lux. They are quite possibly the fan favorite based on previous videos, but their debut is in chapter 2, meaning they're not in the first chapter. I'm sorry. Lux is a human who was already working towards a similar goal as Delaney before they met, and as much as they try to stay calm and collected, there's a few things that can cause them to lose their cool. They're a little bit both of a lover and a fighter. They care about their loved ones more than anything and are more than willing to throw hands for them. They're more than happy to lend Delaney a hand, but things are a bit more complicated for them when it comes to following through on that. And last but not least, don't worry about that angry guy in the background, he's probably not very important to the story. If all you cared about was hearing the summary, first of all, rude. Second of all, you can click off now. That said, there's a lot of questions that come with posting a comic other than the plot, and I did my best to think of everything I could talk about, and if I missed anything, you can let me know by subscribing, and you can also tell me what I missed by leaving a like on this video. You can leave a comment if you want, but I don't really know how that would apply to the situation. First and foremost, where will it be available to read? The search for SACREUM will be available to read for free on both Webtoons and Tapas. Unless one of them pays me good money to make it platform exclusive, you'll be able to get all the chapters in their entirety on both platforms. I also have plans to create a dedicated website that you can read it on, along with other information about it. But if I can be quite blunt, that's a lot of work I don't feel like doing right now, so that'll happen whenever I get to it. You can also get early access to chapters and more via my Patreon, but I'll talk about that more later in the video. Speaking of chapters, how long are they? And this also kind of plays into what my upload schedule will be, since that's pretty directly affected by the chapter length. Sometimes a comic will update fairly frequently with the chapters broken up into different parts, and other times it will update less often, but will upload the entire chapter at once. After much debate with myself, I decided to go with the latter. As much as I'd love to update up to once a week or something like that, it's really important to me that the chapters are read as they were written in their entirety. I feel like a good number of the chapters are longer than the average webcomic, since I'd much prefer to have the chapter cut off at a natural point in the writing rather than try to meet an average chapter length. All things considered, I thought it would be best to update with the fully completed chapters at the cost of posting less frequently. And it's hard to give an estimated guess on how long each chapter will take me, given the really weird circumstances I had while making chapter 1, but that's a story for another video. But as a general guess, I'm hoping each chapter will take me a month to a month and a half. Take that with a grain of salt, since I am only one person working on everything and I'm still very new to this, all things considered, but that's what I'm going to try and aim for. Also, I know it can be hard for some people to read longer chapters, so there's no hard feelings if you have to read them in small portions, not to worry. How are the pages going to be laid out? There are two types of webcomics on the internet. The long, scrolling type layouts, which is the signature of webcomics, and the more traditionally laid out comic pages stacked on top of each other. The latter usually happens when a comic is intended for print or already being printed, and as cool as it would be to have it printed in the future, the Search for SACREUM currently has no plans to be turned into a physical book. I originally tried planning out the pages like a traditional comic book anyways, but I wasn't a fan of how everything looked stacked up on top of each other. Readability was super important to me, and seeing as I was already struggling with sizes of speech bubbles and text, I didn't want to do anything that would make it harder for you guys to read. And in my opinion, it's easier to arrange webcomic panels into a traditional comic arrangement rather than the other way around, so in the end it doesn't really matter to me, and I thought that this would be best. How long is the comic going to be? I went back and forth whether or not I should share the exact number of chapters, since I know people would have mixed feelings about that. Some people enjoy knowing how long a story is before putting a lot of time and emotional investment into it, and other people love the excitement of not knowing what will happen next and when certain events will end or start, which is hard to do when an exact chapter number is given. There isn't a way I can make everyone totally happy with something like this, but I decided the best middle ground was to give a rough number of chapters. I want to put this out there now. The script is completely finished, and each chapter is already planned out. Every scene and every chapter length has already been prepared. That said, The Search for SACREUM has roughly 50 chapters. Could be more, could be less. The only way to find out for sure is to stick around and read it. Before I started scripting this video, I asked you guys if there's anything you wanted me to include. And these questions are less about the creation of the comic and more about things that you would like to know before you read it. You guys left some fun questions, so let's take a look at them. What's the king's name? Throughout all of the years of me working on this comic, I never once said Delaney's dad's name. I feel like as the main antagonist of the story, he should have a bit of a grand reveal and not just casually name dropped in a YouTube video. And for me personally, that includes his name. And I won't give it to you, but I will say these 3 things. And I want you to know that when I said that while recording this audio, I held up 4 fingers. I know how to count. As his dad, he shares the last name as him. And as for his first name, begins with an M. And lastly, while this doesn't always apply to my characters, I more often than not choose names for them based on the names and meanings. All that said, feel free to go to babynames.com or babynames.net and browse all the M names that they have and pick your best guess. I will not be confirming or denying any names in the comments, but I would love to hear the guesses you guys have. What sorts of notes do you keep? Do you have a storyboard created? Also, do you play Overwatch? I don't play Overwatch, I'm sorry. And I don't have a storyboard or anything, and I plan to make thumbnails of each chapter as I start each one, but like I said earlier, I have the entire script planned out. When I make each chapter, I'll follow the script to figure things out before officially starting the pages. And as for notes, I have small notes for little details I want to keep track of, and it's really hard to give examples of these without giving away too much. I also have turnarounds for each character and general location layouts for the more important and reoccurring places in the story. These definitely border more on the creation side of the comic, which is not what this video is about, but I wanted to answer these ones anyways, since it might give you guys a better idea of what the posting schedule might be like. Is there gonna be any romantic or sexual subplot? Gee, I wonder why you're asking. There's gonna be some romance between a few different characters. No, I won't say who, and a number of which you guys have no idea about. As for sexual tension, the first draft of the story was actually written before I was comfortable sharing my more, adult-oriented art online. When I had to rework the script a while back, I sprinkled a little bit more of that into the story, but there's nothing crazy mature in it. It's not suitable for anyone uncomfortable with the occasional lewd joke, or if you can't handle hearing the word fuck, but in terms of adult content, I'd say it's very tame. That said, there are a few parts that are a bit heavy, and it's by no means a story aimed at kids. Did the story change from what you originally planned? With a few small exceptions, it honestly didn't change much at all. The main way it changed was it just kept getting longer and longer the more I worked on it. The general plot has stayed the same, and I had a lot of the story arcs already in mind before I started planning everything out, but in order to piece things together, I would have to add things and write more and more and more, until eventually it grew to be the length that this is today. Believe it or not, this was supposed to be a short story to get me used to making comics, since it's something that I've always wanted to do but have no experience in making. And I have a lot of stories that I want to put into comic form. Like, I know a lot of people thought that my first webcomic would be about Andy and that group of characters, but those characters I have such an emotional attachment to, and I was really scared of making something shitty. And so I started making this story first as a way to sort of ease myself into making comics, and it was originally going to be a short story, so then that way I can actually probably get to the stories I wanted to make within a reasonable amount of time. And in case you couldn't figure it out, that didn't happen. It ended up being a lot longer than I planned it to be, but I ended up falling in love with it too much to change any of it to make it shorter. This is another question that leans more towards the creative side, but I always want to explain the number of reasons why this comic has been such a feat for me to create. And lastly, who's that little pink fella? I've gotten this question so much over the years, and I'm honestly more confused every time, and it's getting to the point where I'm starting to get concerned about you guys. I don't know what you're talking about. While past Oliver is finishing up the drawing, I want to give a thank you to everyone who has supported me throughout the years. It's been a little bit of a meme on my channel for about as long as the channel existed, honestly, about how Oliver's been working on a comic that never comes out, so the fact that I'm sitting here Writing this script and recording this video while having a countdown to the release date is an extremely surreal feeling. This story already meant so much to me as the first comic I'm ever making, but it's gotten to be something really special in the past year alone. I won't dump all of the details onto you, but 2022 was one of the worst years I've ever had to live through, and I was heavily depressed. Working on this helped pull me out of that, and this comic has made me have fun creating again. And it's not the most perfect story out there, but I have poured my absolute heart and soul into it over the years, so it would mean the world to me if you gave it a read. Even if in the end you decide it's not really for you, just checking it out anyway would mean a lot to me. Ever since the beginning of my YouTube career, I've always said that I can never imagine me quitting YouTube, but I could see myself becoming less active as I pursue other things. And as bittersweet as it is to say, I think that time has come. I have plenty of videos I want to make, and I fully intend on streaming weekly like I have, but if it wasn't clear enough, this is a big passion for me. And while I still fully intend on continuing posting to YouTube throughout the years, a lot of my attention is going to be directed to this comic. And if you're looking to support me further, I will be adding comic-related perks to my Patreon. This includes sneak peeks to upcoming chapters, behind-the-scenes art, and sketches of all of the comic pages after their respective chapters come out. I mentioned earlier that I'll also have early access to chapters on my Patreon, but it was important to me that the first chapter was available to read to everyone at the same time. So early access for chapters will start with the release of chapter 2. And if you'd like to support me monetarily but can't afford a repeated Patreon subscription, you can either cancel after 1 month or give me a tip through my Ko-fi page, which is linked in all my videos. And if you aren't in a place where you can afford any monetary support, that's fucking rude. I'm totally kidding. Times have been tough for everyone, and I don't ever want anyone to give me money if they themselves are struggling. I know people always say that they wish they could support me through Patreon, or they wish they could like buy any merch or commissions or whatever it is, but they just can't afford it, and I don't want anybody to feel guilty for that sort of thing, because those things are 100% optional, not mandatory. Of course, watching my videos helps me a ton, but even just reading my comic for free as each chapter will come out is a massive help. The more people who read my comic gets more eyes on each platform that it's on, which, to not state the obvious, is huge. I feel like I've rambled on enough, so before we take a look at the finished art, which is actually the cover art for the comic, I realized I never actually said that, let's hear a word from our patrons. I'd like to give a quick thank you to all of my patrons for helping make this video possible, especially my tiers 3 and 4 members. Big shout out to Jules, SammyYang127, The Tiny Artist, Nyoko Arts, Sage Rosado, Isla, It's Dorky Arts, Castle Roodle, Anna, Nayhaven, Kiara, Hikariyu, Jamie, Creatively Anxious, Dazzy Bones, Michael Sasha Rose, Red Boots the Time Traveler, Kaya Knight, Lauka2, Lovely Siren, Jay Johnson, Vivi Martin, Bread, Fantastic Artist, Newly D, Joss, J Maximus, Pumpkin Prince Lala, Sushi McNushi, Planting Houses, Hen, Ravern, Gravity Drop, Blue, Daydream, Blue Devil 4, OMG It's Muppet, Shara Amy, Sunset Lemonade, Karen, Leia, Tina K, Donna Fangirl, Oswin, Caden, Anime Fan 110, Hero Rose 2551, Luxtorium, Yuinaman, Non-Toxic, Exvacat, Bixel, Cooper, Damage Coda, Pretty Witchy Liachi, Diana Riano, Anik, Lenny, Yudo, Tired TM, Six Sad World, Sam Hickey, Boo, T Brown, Soap Boy Ray, Lex, Ray Rat, Snapdragon Fern, Nest Bones, and Caramel Roses. Thank you all so much for the extra support, it really means a lot to me. And if you're interested in becoming a part of my Patreon, you can find the link in the description box below. I think the best way to end this video is to repeat what I said at the beginning, which is, my god, I can't believe this is finally happening. Thank you all so much for being patient with me throughout the years. And also really quick, I did want to mention that I do have playlists on my Spotify for each of these characters for you to listen to. I didn't want to mention it in the video itself because there is one for Lux and they are a main character, but they aren't in chapter 1, so I was going to mention it more after the release of chapter 2, but this is for everyone who sticks around for the end of the videos. Those will be in the description box for you to listen if you're interested. I really hope you all tune in once it's officially released, and yeah, I will see you in the next video, which will hopefully be sooner rather than later. Bye.